we have this imagining that we're looking at the world and seeing what's really there. We want to tell ourselves that story, that that is our capacity. But the reality is, even at a biological level, right? Like the back of our eyeball is a screen, right? The retina. And then there's a nerve, like an electrical cord, right? That goes to the back of that screen, the optic nerve. And the optic nerve travels that information, right? The chemical reactions that are happening on that screen when the light hits it. That nerve carries that information to the brain. The brain then turns it into this story, into what we feel like we're seeing. And right where the optic nerve touches the back of the eyeball there, we have a massive blind spot. Right? The screen doesn't work there. And so right now, every single one of us, right, with our eyes open, has these two huge blind spots, these two areas that we actually cannot see. But our brain does not want to tell that story. Our brain doesn't want to accept, like, oh man, this is like not exactly what's happening right now. This is a pastiche of some senses, a little bit of imagination, some past ideas of like what this room looked like yesterday. Right? But that's the reality, right? That's what we're actually experiencing. And that's why we don't see physically those blind spots. Our brain just fills them in. Our brain just is like, like licking and, that's okay. Yeah, it's blue there too. This is really difficult for us. We don't want to hold this idea of ourselves, right, as being this kind of, as I like to view myself now in my mind, thanks to my mindfulness practice, I used to see myself as this very like rigid, fixed thing, like that I had a lot of control. I mean, I was a Marine, for crying out loud. Like I walked around like this, like a lot of control, a lot of imagined discipline, purposefulness, focus, deliberacy. There's a comfort in feeling that way. That is how I want to move through the world. But much closer to reality is like that I'm a half-blind person who's like, in a bit of a dream, like kind of half imagining everything that's happening, folk listening to this voice inside of my head with 90% of my attention and really not even paying attention to what's happening outside, just listening to this voice that's telling me a story about it. And the voice is insane, right? The voice has no concept of time, is not connected to reality at all, doesn't care about what's true, doesn't care about what's real. The voice, right, my mind will think anything. Will think anything. It's totally random. And yet, instead of like lashing my attention to, what's real, what's right here in front of me, I spend 90% of my attention listening to the voice. Because I want it to be true. So, this, no surprise, produces a lot of blind spots. A lot of blind spots. And that blind spot, right, that pain, that reality gap, that habit, that unexamined view that we don't know is there, if we end up with too much of them, they end up running our lives. They end up calling all the shots.